Grandpa, after dinner tonight, Mommy's going to trick you into signing the paper that takes the bakery away. My 7-year-old grandson whispered into my ear while I was tying his shoelaces in the hallway. His little hands were gripping my collar so tight I could feel his fingernails through the cotton. I kept my face calm. I finished the bow. I told him good boys deserve ice cream after dinner, and I winked. But inside, something old and quiet inside my chest, something I hadn't felt since the day the bank tried to foreclose on us in '94, woke right back up. Before I tell you what I did next, and trust me, what I did made my own daughter call the police on her father at 11 o'clock at night. Please subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments what part of the country you're listening from. I want to hear from you. Now let me start from the beginning, because to understand why a grandfather like me would do what I did, you got to understand the bakery first. My wife and I opened Sunrise Bread House in 1981, 3 blocks off the main drag in a small town in eastern Pennsylvania. 43 years, 3 ovens, 2 display cases, 1 stubborn old neon sign in the window that still buzzes if it rains. My wife, her name was Annette, and I'll just call her my wife from here on, because saying her name out loud still does something to me even 4 years after the cancer took her. My wife was the baker. I was the books, the flour deliveries, the early mornings, the late nights, the leaking roof, the broken mixer, the daughter we raised in the apartment upstairs. That daughter is named after my mother. I'll just call her my daughter. She's 36 now, married 8 years to a man I'll call my son-in-law, who sells commercial insurance and wears the kind of shoes you don't get dirty. They have 1 child, my grandson, who I love more than I love breathing. The Saturday it all started, I was at home doing my crossword, coffee in the blue mug my wife bought me for a 30th anniversary. The phone rang at 7:45. My daughter. She never calls before 9 on a Saturday. Never has. She had 2 voices growing up, her real voice and her in trouble voice, and the second one came through the line clear as a bell. Hi, Daddy. So listen, we want you over for dinner tonight. Like, early. 5:30? I set down my pen. Tonight? It's Saturday, sweetheart. You usually go to your in-laws. I know. We wanted to do something nice for you. Just us. Family. The word family came out wrong. The way she said it, you'd have thought it was a brand of cereal she was trying to sell me. I asked if everything was all right. She said everything was great. She said it twice. Then she said her husband was making his short ribs, the ones I always say I like, even though I don't really, and that they had something they wanted to talk to me about. Just a little family business thing. No big deal. And then, and this is the part that made me sit up straight. She said, and Dad, just keep an open mind, okay? Now, in 36 years of being that girl's father, she's never once asked me to keep an open mind. Not when she dyed her hair blue at 15, not when she dropped out of community college, not when she married a man I had reservations about, not even when she told me she was pregnant 6 weeks before the wedding. My daughter doesn't ask permission. She informs. So, when she asked me to keep an open mind, I knew something was wrong. But I told her, of course, sweetheart, I'd love to come. I hung up. I stared at my coffee until it went cold. The bakery had been closed on Saturdays for 6 months at that point. I closed it on Saturdays after my hip surgery in the spring, and I'd been meaning to open back up, but kept finding reasons not to. The truth is, since my wife passed, the early mornings hurt different. So Saturdays, I sat with the crossword and thought about her. That morning, I couldn't focus on a single clue. I kept hearing my daughter's voice. Keep an open mind. I got up around 9 and took a drive. I told myself I was just going to pick up a card and a small gift, because I never go to anyone's house empty-handed. But I drove the long way, past the bakery, and there was a car in the back lot that shouldn't have been there. A silver SUV, my son-in-law's, parked behind my dumpster, where you can't see it from the street. Now, my son-in-law has a key. I gave him a key 2 years ago, when my hip first started acting up, in case anything happened, and I needed someone to open up for the morning crew. He's used it twice that I know of. Both times, he told me beforehand. He didn't tell me about today. I drove right on past, didn't stop, didn't slow down. I'm 67 years old, and I've been in business since I was 24. And the one thing I've learned is when something looks wrong, don't show your face. Just gather information. I went to the card shop. I picked out a card for nobody in particular, just so I'd have an excuse for being out. I picked up a small bouquet for my daughter, white tulips, her favorite. I bought my grandson one of those little build-your-own race car kits, because every time I see that kid, his eyes light up over anything with wheels. Then I sat in my truck in the parking lot and called my old friend who'd been my accountant for 31 years. A man I'll just call my accountant because he asked me a long time ago to never say his name in public. I told him I needed to see him Monday morning first thing. He said he had a 9 o'clock, but he'd push it. He didn't ask questions. That's why he's been my accountant for 31 years. Then I drove home. I sat at my kitchen table. I opened the bottom drawer where I keep the bakery's important papers. The deed to the building, the original loan documents from 1981, paid off in 2003. My wife and I drank champagne in the basement that night. The corporate filings, the business insurance, the will I'd updated 3 years ago when my wife died, leaving the bakery and the building to my daughter outright, with a small trust for my grandson. Everything in order. Everything ready to walk straight out my door and into someone else's hands the moment I signed the wrong paper. And here's the part I have to be honest about. I'd been giving them money. A lot of money. Over the 4 years since my wife died, I'd written checks for their down payment on the house. $28,000. For the SUV, $11,000. For my grandson's preschool tuition, $6,000 a year for 2 years. For their kitchen remodel last summer, $14,000 and change. For a family vacation to Florida that I didn't go on, $3,000. I had it all in a yellow legal pad in my desk drawer because my wife taught me to write everything down. She said memory is a thief and paper is honest. The total, that morning, came to just over $78,000 in 4 years. Not counting the dinners I'd paid for, not counting the tools I bought my son-in-law for his garage, not counting the time I co-signed for their second car. I sat at that table and I looked at the pad, and for the first time, I let myself see the pattern. Each check had been preceded by a phone call from my daughter that started with, "Daddy, I hate to ask, but," and ended with her crying a little. Each one, like clockwork. My wife used to say, "You can't say no to that girl, and she knows it." She also used to say, "Watch her husband. He's polite, but polite men are the ones who steal your wallet while shaking your hand." I closed the pad. I called my grandson's school, the elementary school, just to check the lunch menu. That's what I told the secretary. While I had her on the phone, I asked, casually, if my grandson had been picked up from school early on any day that week. She put me on hold for a minute. She came back and said yes. On Thursday, his mother had picked him up at 1 o'clock for a family appointment. Thursday, 2 days before this dinner, 2 days before they wanted me to come over and keep an open mind. I thanked her. I hung up. I sat there for a long time. I got to my daughter's house at 5:30 on the dot. The driveway had 2 extra cars in it I didn't recognize. One was a black sedan with the rental sticker still on the back bumper. The other was a beige Toyota with a parking decal on the windshield from the medical center downtown. My stomach dropped about a foot. My daughter opened the door before I knocked. She was wearing a blouse I'd never seen. Hair done, makeup. She hugged me. Hard. Longer than usual. She told me I looked great. I had on the same gray sweater I wore every cold Saturday for the last decade. She knew that sweater. She used to make fun of that sweater. Now it looked great. Inside, my son-in-law was standing in the living room with 2 people I didn't know. A woman in a navy suit, 50s, with reading glasses on a chain. A man in a polo shirt, maybe 40, with a leather folder under his arm. My son-in-law introduced them quick. The woman was a family friend who happened to do estate work. The man was just stopping by from the medical center, doing some volunteer wellness check-ins for seniors in the area. Volunteer wellness check-ins on a Saturday evening. In my daughter's living room, I smiled. I shook their hands. I told them how nice it was that my daughter had such interesting friends. The woman in the navy suit smiled back with the kind of smile a cat gives a bird. My grandson came running out of the kitchen in his socks and slid into my legs. That's when he grabbed my collar. That's when he whispered what he whispered. He said it in one breath, like he'd been practicing it all afternoon, terrified he'd forget. The bakery. The paper. After dinner. I straightened up. I patted his head. I told him he was getting too big to slide on hardwood like that. My daughter laughed too loud from the kitchen doorway. My son-in-law watched me from across the room with his arms folded. Dinner was strange. The short ribs were dry. Nobody touched them much. The woman in the Navy suit asked me 3 times how I was sleeping lately. The man from the medical center asked me what year it was. Just casually. Just in passing. Like he wasn't really asking. I gave him the year. I gave him the date. I gave him the name of the current vice president, and I added, with a smile, that I'd voted against him. The woman wrote something in a small notebook she had on her lap, under the table. I saw her do it. She thought I didn't. My grandson ate 3 bites, and then sat there, pushing peas around his plate. Every time I looked at him, he looked away fast. My son-in-law kept the wine glasses full. He filled mine 3 times. I drank from it twice and poured most of it into my water glass when nobody was looking. An old trick from 40 years of business dinners with men who wanted to talk. Price after the 3rd pour. Around 7, my daughter cleared the plates and brought out coffee in a folder. A blue folder. She set it down in front of me with both hands, like it was a baby. She sat down across from me. The woman in the Navy suit pulled her chair closer. The man from the medical center stayed on the couch but turned his body toward us. My son-in-law sat at the head of the table. My grandson had been sent upstairs to put on pajamas. They'd planned the whole thing right down to the part where the kid wouldn't be in the room. My daughter started talking. She said she'd been worried about me. She said since her mother died, I'd seemed sad and slower and forgetful. She said she'd noticed the bakery was closed on Saturdays now. She said she just wanted to help. She said the woman in the Navy suit had drawn up a few simple papers, just a precaution, just so that if anything ever happened, the family wouldn't be scrambling. She said one of them was a power of attorney. She said one of them was to put the bakery in the building into a family trust, with her as trustee. She said it would help with taxes. She said it would protect everything for my grandson. She said all I had to do was sign a few pages and we could all relax and enjoy our coffee. I looked at her, my only child. The little girl who used to fall asleep in the flower bin behind the counter when she was 3 because she liked the warm smell. The little girl whose forehead I stitched up with butterfly bandages when she fell off her bike at 8 because we couldn't afford the ER copay that month. The little girl who walked down the aisle at her wedding holding my arm so tight she left fingernail marks on my sleeve. I looked at her, and I let my face do something I'd been practicing in the rearview mirror on the drive over. I let my eyes go a little watery. I let my mouth go a little soft. I let my hand shake just slightly when I reached for the coffee cup. I said very quietly, "Sweetheart, this is a lot to think about. My head is. It's been pounding all day. Could I take these home and look at them tomorrow when I'm fresh?" The woman in the Navy suit jumped in before my daughter could answer. She said, very gently, that it was really better to handle these things in one sitting, with family present, because seniors sometimes get confused going back and forth. She actually used the word seniors to my face in my daughter's dining room. I let my eyes water a little more. I said I just felt so tired. I said maybe one of those headaches was coming on. I said I was sorry to be such a bother. My son-in-law leaned forward and said, "Dad, it's okay. It's just paperwork. We're all here to help you." Dad. He's called me by my first name for 8 years. I asked if I could use the bathroom. They said, of course. I walked down the hallway slow, the way you walk when your hip really does hurt, except mine wasn't hurting at all that night. I closed the bathroom door. I sat on the edge of the tub. I took out my phone. I texted my accountant one line. I said, "It's worse than I thought. Tomorrow at your house. Bring the lawyer." He texted back in under a minute. 2 words. "I'm ready." Then I texted my oldest friend in the world, a man I'll just call my best friend, who was the chief of police in our town for 22 years before he retired in 2019. We've known each other since we were 8 years old. He was the best man at my wedding. I was the best man at his. I texted him and I said, I need to see you tonight, late, not at my house. He texted back, come over whenever. Doors open. I came back to the dining room. I sat down. I picked up the pen they'd laid out for me, a heavy silver pen, the kind you buy when you want a moment to feel official. I held it over the first signature line. My daughter actually leaned forward in her chair. She actually held her breath. I saw her do it. My own child, holding her breath, waiting to watch me sign away 43 years. I set the pen down. I said, I'm going to take these home, sweetheart. I'll bring them back tomorrow. I love you, but I don't sign anything I haven't read twice, and right now I can barely read once. Your mother would haunt me if I signed something at this table tonight. I said it kind. I said it tired. I said it like an old man who couldn't quite handle the moment, but who'd been raised to be careful. The woman in the navy suit started to object. My daughter cut her off. She said, of course. Daddy, of course. Take them home. Just promise you'll bring them back in the morning. I promised. I kissed her on the forehead. I shook everyone's hand. I went upstairs to say goodnight to my grandson. He was sitting on his bed in dinosaur pajamas. He looked up at me with the biggest, most scared eyes I have ever seen on a child. I sat down next to him. I put the folder on the floor. I leaned in close like he'd done to me, and I whispered right into his ear. I said, you did the right thing. You're the bravest boy I have ever known. Grandpa's going to fix it. And no matter what happens, no matter what Mommy and Daddy say, I will love you until the last day I'm alive. Do you understand? He nodded against my shoulder. He held on to me for a long time. When I finally got up to leave, he whispered, don't tell them I told, I said. Cross my heart. I drove straight to my best friend's house. I didn't go home first. I took a route through 3 different neighborhoods to make sure nobody was behind me. I'm not paranoid. I'm careful. There's a difference. He had the porch light on. He had coffee made. He had his old yellow legal pad on the kitchen table, the same kind he'd been writing on since 1985. I told him everything. The phone call, the SUV behind the dumpster, the school pickup on Thursday, the 2 strangers at dinner, the folder, the wellness check, the questions about the year, the woman writing things down under the table, my grandson's whisper. He listened the whole way through without interrupting once. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and he said one sentence. He said, Buddy, they're trying to declare you incompetent. I knew it, I'd known it all day, but hearing him say it out loud, in his kitchen, with the same coffee cup he's used since the Reagan administration in his hand, made it real in a way that almost knocked the wind out of me. He told me what to do. He had a friend who was a forensic geriatric physician who did legal evaluations for the courts. He said he could get me an appointment Monday morning, on paper, with a real evaluation, a real signed report, that would establish on the record that I was of sound mind. He said the wellness check guy at dinner was almost certainly going to file something in the next 48 hours saying I had shown signs of cognitive decline. He said we needed our paper before they filed theirs. First in wins, he said. Always. He also said something I haven't been able to forget. He said, she's your daughter. You can do this gentle or you can do this hard. But if you do it gentle, she will try this again in 2 years when she runs out of money. If you do it hard, you might lose her. There's no third door. I sat in his kitchen until almost 2 in the morning. I drove home. I didn't sleep. I didn't try. Sunday I spent at the bakery with the lights off and the door locked, going through every inventory book, every supplier contract, every bank statement from the last 3 years. I found 2 checks I hadn't written, both made out to cash. Both for under $500, just under the threshold where the bank would have called me. Both signed with a signature that almost looked like mine. Almost. My son-in-law had been in there with that key more than twice. I made copies of everything. I locked the originals in the safe in the basement, the one nobody knew about except me and my wife. Monday morning at 7:30, I was at my accountant's house. He'd called his lawyer on Sunday. The lawyer was already there. We sat at his dining room table for 4 hours. We rewrote my will from scratch. The bakery and the building, the savings, the small piece of land I own out by the river that nobody knows about, all of it goes into an irrevocable trust. My grandson is the sole beneficiary. He gets income for education starting at 18, with the principal released to him at 30. The trustee is my best friend, with my accountant as backup. My daughter is named in the will, but only to receive the contents of one specific drawer in my bedroom, which contains her mother's wedding ring, her baby pictures, and a letter I wrote to her 3 years ago and never had the courage to give her. That's it. That's her inheritance. The ring, the pictures, the letter. The lawyer drew up a revocation of any power of attorney signed under fraud. He drew up a statement of fact regarding the events of Saturday night. He drew up a notice to the medical center asking for the credentials of the man on their couch and any reports he may have generated. The forensic doctor saw me at 1 o'clock. He spent 90 minutes with me. He signed a report that afternoon stating I had no signs of cognitive impairment of any kind, and that my reasoning, memory, and judgment were all in the top range for my age. We had everything filed at the courthouse by 4:30 Monday afternoon. By 5, my daughter had called me 11 times. I didn't answer once. At 6 o'clock, she showed up at my house. She was crying before I opened the door. She said the medical center had called her. Apparently, the man on their couch was a real employee, but he wasn't authorized to be doing what he'd done, and someone had filed a complaint against him that morning. She said her lawyer had called her. She said the trust paperwork had been served on her at the front door at 5:15. She said, "Daddy, what did you do?" I led her into the kitchen. I sat her down at the table where I taught her to do her math homework. I made her a cup of tea. She didn't drink it. She just kept saying, "Daddy, what did you do? What did you do? What did you do?" I let her ask 3 times. Then I said, "What did I do, sweetheart? What did you do?" She didn't answer for a long time. Then she said the only true thing she said all night. She said, "I didn't think you'd notice." I'll be honest with you. That hurt worse than anything else that happened the whole weekend. Worse than the SUV behind the dumpster. Worse than the strangers at dinner. Worse than the woman in the Navy suit calling me a senior. My own daughter sat at my kitchen table and told me she'd tried to take everything I'd ever built because she didn't think her father was paying attention anymore. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't even raise my voice. I told her the bakery was now in a trust she couldn't touch. I told her the will had been changed. I told her the $78,000 I'd given her over the last 4 years was on a yellow pad in my desk, and I considered it a loan, with no interest, payable when she was able. I told her that her son had told me what was going to happen at dinner, and that I had taught that boy to be brave, because I'd taught his mother to be brave once too, and one of them remembered. She put her face down on the table and she cried for 40 minutes. I let her. I didn't touch her. I sat across from her and I cried a little too, but not where she could see. When she finally sat up, she asked if she could still see her son's grandfather. She asked it like that, not, "Can I still see you? Can my son still see his grandfather?" She knew what she'd done. She knew what she'd done. She knew what she'd traded. I told her yes. I told her my grandson would have me every Sunday for as long as I drew breath, and he would have a college fund, and he would have a bakery to inherit if he wanted it, and he would have a grandfather who showed up. I told her the door to my house was open to her. The door to my checkbook was closed forever. I told her she had 1 year to show me she was a different person than the one who'd put a folder in front of me on Saturday night. If she was, we'd talk. If she wasn't, we wouldn't. She left around 9. I sat in the kitchen until midnight. Then I got up and I called the police on my son-in-law. Not my daughter. Just him. Because of those 2 checks. Because the signatures weren't mine. Because 43 years of my wife's flour-dusted hands and burned forearms, and 4 in the morning alarms deserved at least that much. The investigation is still going on as I'm telling you this. I don't know how it'll end. I don't know if my daughter will keep her marriage. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. I just know my wife would have done the same. My grandson came over the following Sunday. I had pancakes ready. We ate at the counter. He asked me, real quiet, if Mommy was mad at me. I told him grown-ups get mad sometimes, and then they figure it out. He nodded. Then he asked me if the bakery was still ours. I told him, yes, buddy, it's still ours, and someday, if he wants it, it'll be his. He thought about that for a long minute. Then he asked if he could come help me on Saturdays, since I was thinking about opening back up. I said yes. I said I'd been needing a partner for a while now. I'm reopening Sunrise Bread House on Saturdays starting next month. My grandson is going to wear an apron my wife made for our daughter when she was 8. It's been folded in a drawer for 28 years. It still smells faintly like vanilla. If this story moved you, please give it a thumbs up and let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Tell me, would you have been able to do what I did to your own child? I don't know if I was right. I just know I'm still standing, and so is the bakery, and so is that little boy who whispered the truth to his grandfather in a hallway when he was supposed to be tying his shoes. To watch the next story, click on the box on the screen. Thank you, friend, for sitting with me a while. I've been turning this whole thing over in my head for months now, and I keep coming back to one simple truth. Nothing my daughter did to me at that dinner table on Saturday night was an accident. It was the harvest of seeds I helped plant. Every check I wrote without making her pay it back. Every excuse I made for her husband when my gut told me different. Every time I told myself, she's just stressed, she's just tired, she's just going through a phase, when what she was really doing was learning, year by year, that her father's wallet had no bottom and her father's love had no spine. I taught her that. Nobody else. And the day she sat across from me with a folder and a stranger in a navy suit, she wasn't betraying the man she'd grown up with. She was acting exactly like the man she'd grown up with, had trained her to act. That's the hardest lesson of getting old, I think. The people who hurt you didn't fall out of the sky. You raised them, or you married them, or you chose them, and somewhere along the way you mistook silence for kindness and giving for loving. I gave my daughter $78,000 in 4 years because I thought that's what a good father does. What a good father actually does is teach his child that money is earned, that respect is earned, that a parent's love is the one thing on this earth that is free, and the rest you worked for. I forgot that. My wife never would have. She would have said no the first time. I said yes 78,000 times. But here's the other side of it, and this is the part I want you to hear. The same little boy who was raised in that house, by those same parents, in that same kitchen, that little boy chose to grab my collar and tell me the truth. 7 years old, me shaking. He could have stayed quiet. He could have done what kids do, which is keep their head down and let the grown-ups sort it out. He didn't. He did the bravest thing I have ever seen a human being do. And he did it because somewhere in him, in the part that nobody can program, there's a sense of right and wrong that is his alone. So if you're sitting somewhere listening to this and thinking about your own family, your own bakery, your own folder, and your own table someday, I'll tell you what I tell myself every morning at the counter now. Be generous, but never be afraid to say no. Love your children, but never confuse love with funding. Watch the small ones because they see everything, and the day they whisper something to you, you put down whatever you're holding and you listen. And when the moment comes, and it will come, be smart enough to plan, brave enough to act, and decent enough to leave a door open behind you. My daughter has a year. The door is open. I'm still standing. And so is the bakery.